ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। कूजन्तं राम रामेति मधुरं मधुराक्षरम् आरुह्य कविता शाखां वन्दे वाल्मीकिकोकिलम्। मनोजवं मारुततुल्यवेगं जितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानरयूथमुख्यं श्रीरामदूतं शिरसा नमामि। आपदामपहर्तारं दातारं सर्वसम्पदां लोकाभिरामं श्रीरामं भूयो भूयो नमाम्यहम्। दक्षिणे लक्ष्मणो यस्य वामे च जनकात्मजा पुरतो मारुतिर्यस्य तं वन्दे रघुनन्दनम्। Hare Krishna, welcome back. So we're going to start, hopefully, we do chapters 43, 44 and 45 from Ayodhya Kanda. In 43, more in 44, there are some very wonderful verses. So usually I have one or two shlokas and an overall idea. But today I'm going to go certain verse after verse after verse, because one of my heroes in Ramayana is Sumitra Devi. She speaks very little, unlike me, but conveys a lot, unlike me. So she's one hero that I have to learn from, of how she gets right to the essence, and she has an ability to pacify whoever she speaks to in a very powerful way. So she had spoken a few verses to Lakshmana, blessing him, telling him, go to the forest. We talked about this. Today she's going to pacify Kausalya, her older co-wife. So let's go back to chapter 43. And this is Kausalya, who, now that Ramachandra has left and he's walking away into the forest, and from afar you can only see some dust cloud but nothing else. So in a very severe, heartbroken, shattered, dismayed, and completely torn away condition, as a normal human being might do, she blames Kaikeyi. And she says this Kaikeyi is like a snake. One of the names for a snake of many, sarpa. Sarpa means to crawl on its dorsal side. Another is ahijagma. Ahijagma means moving like a snake. A snake moves crookedly. You never see a snake going straight. So those who have snake-like mentality, they say that they move crookedly. So she says, ahijagma, like a snake, she has moved in a crooked way, and she has released her venom on Ramachandra, who is one of the best among human beings. Now that Ramachandra is out of her way, she will move freely in Ayodhya, just like a snake that has just cast off its dry skin. I'm sure you know snakes and pythons at different intervals of time, they shed their skin and they have a new skin with which they move in a very slithering way. She says, now that Ramachandra has been banished, she will be very happy that her desires have been fulfilled. And at home, I have to be constantly worried that I have a deadly snake here and she can bite or sting anyone anytime. Then she goes into her own grief, that I'm consumed by this blazing fire of separation. Just as the sun scorches the earth with its very powerful rays. I think I mentioned it previously, but there is a reference, and I have to remember in what context it is, but there's a reference. Oh, it is in the context of Vaishnava Aprad. But I'm going to say it here because it has the connotation, it has the same analogy of the earth scorching the earth. So on a very, very hot day, if you're out and about, the sun burns us in two ways. One, our head is burnt by the scorching heat. And the second is that our feet are burnt by the scorching heat. Of course, we all wear shoes and all that, so that the analogy has its limitation. But previously, if you were walking on the floor, tiled floor or stone floor or hot sand of Vrindavan or such places, the floor gets very, very hot. So even if you don't have an umbrella, you can manage the heat to some degree. But in the same heat, you cannot manage walking on the ground without shoes, because somehow the ground gets hotter than the air around the head, if you will, or the head itself. So in the context of Vaishnava Aprad, he says that even if one commits an offense against the Lord, it's not so scorching or detrimental as it is to commit an offense towards a devotee. Somehow the heat of the offense is a lot more. So it burns the soles of the feet. The same sunlight, same time of day burns the soles of the feet a lot more because it comes from the earth than from the sun directly. Or you want to put a positive spin on it, Krishna is very merciful, but the mercy coming from a devotee, because somehow they have the ability to take Krishna's mercy and give it in a particular way, that it is even more intense. So she says, the fire of separation that I have is like the earth being scorched in summer by the oppressive rays of sun. So as Kausalya is lamenting like this, because remember, she's going through this major separation from Ramachandra. So Sumitra's words work like a beautiful umbrella over Kausalya's head. They soften, they make the heat of separation a little tolerable and soothing. So she says, my dear Kausalya, Ramachandra is endowed by every possible virtue. So there is nothing lacking in him. So you don't need to lament the way you're lamenting. As a mother, you are, but also understand that this Ramachandra of yours is formidable. Okay, and take your attention to the purpose behind his going to the forest. You should be proud in one sense that he, to fulfill the words of his father and to make sure that his father never goes down in history as an untruthful person, he has renounced an entire kingdom and gone to the forest. And the way he's fulfilling that is in the forest, he's following the path of the greatly wise sages. And the result that will come from it is everlasting. Not only in this world, but in the next world as well. So such a son is incomparable, and that is who he is for you. So what is there to be grieving? Look at the bright side of it. Then she says that he's not alone. Lakshmana is with him, and Lakshmana is the compassionate being to all living entities. And he also has acted in the most noble manner by following his brother. It's not just the two of them. The great daughter of Videha, Vaidehi. And the reason there is a purpose in calling her or addressing her as Vaidehi. And I'll explain it. She says that the daughter of Videha, who's so used to all these comforts, just walked into the forest with your son, because more than the comforts of home, she wanted the comfort of the company of her husband, although the circumstances are very, very inconvenient or uncomfortable. The word Videha means one who is without a body or without the attachment or conception of body. This is why the kings in the Videha dynasty, they all got the title Videha Raja, Videha. Because they're all very, they're all liberated beings. They don't have any bodily conception of life. So a daughter born in such a family is called Vaidehi. So what is the freedom from bodily conception of life? That she's walked into a forest, although she's very, very used to being in the midst of the highest luxuries. Then she says, your son is actually waving the flag of fame in this world, which means he's the flag bearer. He's the person who, if you talk of the word fame, then the synonymous is Ramachandra. Okay, he's very righteous. He's truthful. And his wealth, we were talking last night about wealth. We spent a whole bunch of time. And it says that his wealth are righteousness and truth. So he's decorated, he's abundantly rich in these. That means they will always, a person who has money or gold or wealth, that wealth can only help in certain conditions. It cannot help in all conditions. But as far as truthfulness and righteousness, they help in all situations of life, apparently. Okay. Then she says, your son is 100% pure and great. And he's so pure and great that even the sun cannot scorch him. The hidden meaning is he is the one who gives heat to the sun. So the sun cannot do anything to him. Another meaning is he is the descendant in the Sun dynasty. And so even that blazing sun will take care of his own descendant very carefully. And she says that while he's walking in the forest, even if the sun is very hot, Vayu will surround him with very gentle and cool breezes that flow in the woodlands of the forests. And so in all seasons, Ramachandra will be comfortable. And then he says, then while Ramachandra sleeps at night, the moon will comfort him by touching him with his cool beams, just like a father embraces his son. And the commentary is that moon, although it's a different dynasty, comes from the Supreme Lord anyway. So the moon is like the second sun, because the sun gives light. Moon also gives light, like a second sun, S-U-N, but will treat Ramachandra as a son, S-O-N. And then she tells Kausalya, this Ramachandra is carrying with him weapons that Vishwamitra has given. And Vishwamitra is as good as Lord Brahma, in the sense that Brahma creates all the planetary systems, and Vishwamitra created a whole constellation for Trishanku. And that Vishwamitra has given these weapons to him, Bala and Atibala. And after he saw how Ramachandra killed Subahu, he gave all the gift of these weapons, so nothing can happen to Ramachandra. He will be fearless. He will rely on his own strength, and he almost like he's living in a palace of his own. And which enemy can escape Ramachandra's arrows? Okay, so this entire earth is already under his command, and before you know, he'll be back. And he'll be back, and you will see that he's endowed with valor, strength, and all the living beings will feel so sheltered by him, and he will regain his kingdom. And here's a beautiful couplet of verses where she's glorifying Ramachandra because she understands the constitutional nature of Ramachandra, that is the Supreme Personality. So she says, Suryasyapi bhavet Suryaha. So he is like the sun for the sun. That means he illuminates Suryadev. Okay. And she says, Hi Agner api prabho prabhu. And he gives luster or this brightness to fire. He is the cause of the luster for fire. Shriyaha Shriyascha Bhaved. And he is the one who gives Shriya or opulence, its opulence. And Agrya Kirtihi Kirtya. He gives fame. So we were talking, I think last time, that when we sing Damodar Ashtakam, we say Lasat Kundalam. Usually we put on an ornament. I think we talked about it last week. When you put on an ornament, it is to beautify the person who's putting on an ornament. But in the case of the Supreme Lord, by he adorning an ornament, the ornament gets beauty. So Kirti Kirtyaha means he's the one who gives fame. It's fame. It's famous because he's the one who is giving it that quality. And Kshama. Forbearance or tolerance is called tolerance because he is tolerant. He shows what tolerance means, or is the source of tolerance. She said then very soon Ramachandra will be coronated. So nothing for you to worry about. So now the camera moves to where Ramachandra is. Vishwamitra is, Valmiki Muni is now taking us to the scene where Ramachandra is. Ramachandra is already outside Ayodhya on his way out. And as he's on his way out, he's dressed in tree bark and kusha grass, and everyone is crying. Okay. And they're crying because Sita Devi, so this is the contradictory picture, that Sita is the goddess of fortune. That means wherever Sita is, that environment is full of wealth and prosperity. That Sita Devi is following Ramachandra, who's rejected all wealth and fame and money and kingdom, and is dressed in bark. Yet that Sita Devi is following him. Usually everyone follows Sita Devi. In this case, she is following him. So Ramachandra, Lakshmana, the order is Ramachandra, Sita Devi, and Lakshmana. They are walking. And as they are walking, again, Valmiki tells us that Sumitra Devi is now consoling Kausalya that soon you will see Ramachandra come back, take the throne rightfully, and when he returns from his exile, you can do Abhishek for him with your tears of happiness when he returns from you. So for now, you please give up your grief. Okay, nothing inauspicious will happen to Ramachandra, Sita, and Lakshmana. And then she says, if you are overcome by fear and lamentation, how will you take care of all these people that you're supposed to take care of? How will you console them? There's nobody more superior than Ramachandra. And then she says, when he returns to Ayodhya, Ramachandra will massage your soft feet with his soft, tender hands. And he will pay obeisances to you, and then you can do abhishek for him with your tears, like a cloud that drenches a mountain peak. When Kausalya heard these words of Sumitra, it is said that all of Kausalya's lamentation went away. And it went away not over time, it went away immediately. This is Sumitra's very amazing way of speaking. So here is the verse. It's Ayodhya Kanda, chapter 44, text number 31. So this is the next chapter. Nishamya. Nishamya means having heard. Nishamya tal Lakshmana matra vakyam. So hearing the words of Lakshmana's mother. She didn't say Sumitra, Lakshmana's mother. Lakshmana's mother is relevant here because her son is also gone to the forest. In fact, her grief should be even more, logically speaking, because Dasharatha banished Ramachandra. He never banished Lakshmana. Lakshmana went voluntarily. Sumitra could have said, it is between father and son, why are you getting involved? But Sumitra said, oh, go, please serve Ramachandra. The greatest opportunity for 14 years of service exclusively that is not shared by anyone, and not in a envious way, but you will exclusively serve Ramachandra and Sita Devi for 14 years. Don't miss this opportunity. Go. So it's there, Lakshmana Matra Vakyam. Ramasya Matur. So she's speaking to Ramachandra's mother. Naradeva Patnyaha. She is the queen, which is Kausalya. And what happened? The effect of her speaking is Sadhya Sharire Vinanasha Shoka. Sadhya. Immediately. Instantly. We hear the word Sadhya in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sadhyo Hridi Avarudhyate. Instantly in the heart, the Lord appears. So here instantly, Sadhya Sharire Vinanasha Shokaha. The lamentation was just destroyed. And Sharadakto Megha Ivalpatoyaha. Alpatoya means with a little bit of rain. Megha, this is a cloud. Sharadgataha is in autumn when little bit of rain falls from the clouds. It pours little rain and in an instant the cloud vanishes. So this cloud is the cloud of lamentation. And she cried. The poetry is just fantastic. Kausalya is crying, which is like the autumnal cloud that also pours a little rain, but very quickly goes away because of the heat of the fall season. So by her words, she dissipated this cloud of grief from Kausalya. A very beautiful poetic. Then, chapter 45, Ramachandra is being followed by all the residents of Ayodhya. They don't want to live in Ayodhya. Everyone is crying. And they've been trying to beg him to stop, but he's not stopping. So as they are progressing out of Ayodhya, different friends, associates, acquaintances, they're all stopping at different stages and sort of giving up hope that Ramachandra will come back. But he's being ardently followed by the Brahmanas of Ayodhya. And these Brahmanas, on their backs, are carrying the wood that they need for yagyas. They are carrying the yajna supplies. And they are saying, we don't want to stay in Ayodhya. We don't want to perform any of these yagyas. We want to be with you. And wherever you are, that's where we'll perform our yajna, because that is the fullest culmination of our yajnas. So they keep begging Ramachandra, please stop, don't go. And Ramachandra, it is said that Ramachandra is just looking forward. He doesn't even turn and look back at them. Because if he turns and looks back at them, one, their grief will be intensified. Second, at this point, it will become a violation of the promise to leave Ayodhya. So he doesn't even look at them. So they are walking faster behind the chariot. And because they are with the chariot, Ramachandra, Sita Devi and Lakshmana get off the chariot and start walking very quickly. So these people are also following. They're trying to maintain that distance so they can keep moving faster. So the question one may ask is, why did Ramachandra get off the chariot? Chariot could have been faster. True. But Ramachandra is a very, very strict follower of etiquette. So when the Brahmanas are addressing him, although he's the supreme personality, his respect for the Brahmanas is he cannot sit on a chariot while the Brahmanas are talking to him. So he gets off the chariot, he's on the ground walking while they are talking to him. Very, very precise in his following of etiquette. So these Brahmanas, near the end of chapter 45, say certain words to stop, to somehow get Ramachandra to stop. So they're saying, we as Brahmanas don't want you to leave. But he's not listening. So he says, Bhakti manti hi bhutani. Jangama jangamani cha. So Ramachandra, not just Brahmanas that we are referring to, like ourselves, but just see, out of love for you, Bhakti manti hi, just there's such love for you, Bhutani, all these living beings. And what kind of living beings? Jangama jangamani cha. Both the moving or the movable and non-movable entities are constantly begging you. They're supplicating. Yachamaneshu. They're begging you. They're pleading. Ramam tvam bhakti bhakteshu darshaya. Darshaya, just see. The birds, they're begging you to not leave. The animals are begging you. In fact, even the trees are telling you not to go. So one may say, how are the trees? So then they give the example of the trees. They say, anugantum akshakta stvam mule ruddhatveginaha annataha vayuvegena vikroshavanti padapaha. Padapa is another word for tree. So we know taror is the name of how we call a tree. Vriksha and Padapa. The word Padapa literally means, Pa is nourished. So Krishna is called Gopala or Gopa because he nourishes and takes care of the cows. So Padapa means those entities that nourish themselves or drink from their feet. Pada, that is the roots. So because trees take nourishment from their roots, they're called Padapa. So Padapaha means in plural. trees. And how are they stopping you? He says, although the trees are fixed in their place by their roots, by moving this way in the wind, they are indicating to you that their movement is stopped, but they are unable to weep. So they are indicating to you, please don't go, because they are bending towards you. Then he says, look at these birds. The birds, they who would have you seen a bird? Bird is always restless. Any bird is restless. But these birds who are constantly looking for food, they're always snacking, little by little, they peck and they eat. But they become completely quiet. They're just sitting like that, not searching for any food, sitting motionless on tree branches, because they're very, very heartbroken. And by that, being stunned in sadness, they're indicating to you, please don't leave. So in this way, the Brahmanas were crying. Brahmanas were crying. Now, that's sort of the very, what's that picture? Very conflicting picture. Brahmanas, by nature, don't cry because they are always supposed to be full with knowledge, right? In Brahmanical culture, knowledge is the one that guides people's emotions. So they have a sense of detachment, they have a sense of strength by which the philosophy helps them not to lament over things. Even these Brahmanas were crying. So Ramachandra's love is so intense, or love for them and their love for Ramachandra is so intense that even Brahmanas were crying. Okay. Then while they were crying, they came to the Tamasa river that was flowing across. And as soon as the Tamasa river came in their vision, they all thought, oh, the river is now a blockade. It's like something that's not going to allow Ramachandra to cross, because Ramachandra's direction is like this and the Tamasa river is going this way. So when they came to the Tamasa river, there's a beautiful verse here. Evam vikroshatam tesham dvijatinam nivartena dadrishe tamasa tatra varayantiva raghavam. They thought that the Tamasa river has suddenly come to obstruct Ramachandra's path, so he will stop going. So even the river is flowing in a way to indicate that it does not want Ramachandra to cross it and go. Yet he is very determined, so nothing can stop his determination. So it says that Sumitra unyoked the horses because they were tired and allowed them to stroll here and there and relax a little bit. Then he made them drink the water from the river, take a bath in the river, and then he released them for grazing near the banks of the Tamasa river. And that's how chapter 45 ends. So any questions or comments? We've covered 3 chapters. Any questions or comments? Either on this or any other things that you've been contemplating on in Ramayana?
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Just a
Krishna.
comment. I was thinking this section of Ramayana is, I've heard Guru Maharaj use the term Udipan.
Yeah.
Now this section of Ramayana, that's what it reminds me of, that it gives just an appreciation, it gives a glimpse of the extreme love the Ayodhya Vasis have for Rama. And so that itself is very endearing, even though it's so sad, but it's just so full of love. And so thank you. And especially the description of how the Brahmanas were carrying food on their back. I mean, yeah, just thank you so much.
So Ramachandra had taken their heart away or stolen their heart, but by his leaving, he now pretty much permeated every cell of their being to such intensity that they cannot think of anything else but him. This is his way of heightening that sense of love for him. Thank you for sharing, Varshana Mataji. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Subhadra Chaitanya Rasa Prabhu's daughter. I had a question about a different section of the Ramayana.
Yeah, sure. Is it the one that we've already covered or something in the future?
Something we've already covered.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
So, Parush, I'd heard from some lecture from some time ago that Parashurama didn't come to anyone who was getting married or was just married. That's why Dasharatha had to marry 365 times or so. So he had 360 wives plus the 3 main ones. And so why did Parashurama come when Rama had just married Sita? Isn't that kind of breaking his vow or something?
Parashuram, there are many reasons. One of the reasons Parashurama came is because he heard that Ramachandra had broken Lord Shiva's bow. And so he thought that there is another Kshatriya that is worthy of punishment or deserving of punishment, because Parashuram appeared to punish the Kshatriyas. So he meets Ramachandra, who is a little boy, and says, "Oh, you're very strong, it seems. I heard that you had broken Lord Shiva's bow. Here is Lord Vishnu's bow. Let me see you string it." So it is for that avatar, the Shaktavesha avatar, to meet the source of all of his power, Ramachandra. And he's a Kshatriya. He heard that he was coming back from Janaka's ashram, but he didn't know that he was all married and everything. He knows that he's coming back, but he comes to face off with Ramachandra. And there, his entire thousands and thousands and thousands of years of meditation has culminated in seeing the personality of Godhead face to face. That is the purpose of Parashurama's coming. He thought he was meeting a Kshatriya, but he understands that he meets the Supreme Personality.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question. So Rama will obey his father or Vashishta more?
Ask again. Ramachandra what?
He obeys Vashishta or Dasharatha more?
It depends on the situation. The king ordered him to leave, so he left. Even when Vashishta said, no, don't go, he said to Vasishta that we are all supposed to follow the order of the king. So when he was in school, he followed Vasishta. When he was at home, he followed Dasharatha. And it's not that Dasharatha is a father, but Dasharatha is a king. And the king's order is final.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
You're welcome.
Krishna Prabhu, I had a question.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I was thinking when you mentioned about the etiquette that Lord Ram comes down the chariot and then because it's the etiquette to follow to speak to a Brahmana, like in Kali Yuga, I don't think we can even try to attempt to do that, but is it even worth even, kind of encouraging the kids or somebody to do that, because almost nowhere in the society or even for so many other reasons, I don't think that etiquette even exists, right, Prabhu? Like kind of.
It exists in the adults, not in the children. Telling a child to do something is not so powerful unless the parent does by example. So when Vaishnavas meet, the habit of offering obeisances when you meet is a very powerful samskara for children.
Mm.
Or greeting someone who comes home in a particular way, when someone is leaving, going up to the door to say bye. These are all little
Mm.
acts of etiquette that instill a whole bunch of culture in the children, but in general everyone. So when Vaishnavas meet, offering of obeisances, we were trained like that. When the spiritual master enters the room, we stand up. If he leaves the room, you stand up and pay obeisances. I was taught that if the spiritual master is standing, you can't sit and talk to him. It is proper to stand up.
Mm.
So little things is just ingrained in from childhood or from Vaishnava culture. So we have a whole section of teaching called Vaishnava Sadachar. Sat Achar means proper etiquette and proper behavior in the presence of the deity and the devotee. So Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he gives 64 items, and they seem very like, come on, don't sit this
Mm.
way, don't turn that way. But why are these things identified by Rupa Goswami? Because these
Mm.
rules are meant to give a sense of vigilance or awareness that I'm in the presence of someone very, very great. In this case, the deity, the Supreme Personality, or an exalted Vaishnav.
Yeah, it's a little tangent, but how does it apply when you're kind of talking to somebody who are Westerners because they think it's more an Indian culture, right? It's not, I mean,
Yeah, so it takes time for. So if you're just a random person you meet and fall on the ground and touch
no,
their
no,
feet, I mean, it is very. Even if they're your Western guest coming to your house, if you offer
right.
obeisances, then they will freak out. There are many stories. Once I went to receive my spiritual master at the airport, and at that time younger and a little not as mature, I should say, not mature, even not so mature even now, but so all excited that I'm receiving my spiritual master. Stopped the car, got off, and at the O'Hare arrivals offered my obeisances. And when I got up, he was not there. And I looked around, he was already sitting in the car with the door closed. So that was an indicator. You have to have a proper place and time. Otherwise, people around you will be like, what is going on here?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Thank you.
But, in the 1970s, when devotees could go to the airport and pretty much take away the entire gate area with mridangas, kartals, and flower petals and garlands, and Prabhupada were walking out. See how they received it. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Yugal Kishore Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Prabhuji, one question that the sloka that you told, the money can help in some circumstances, but character and the righteousness can actually help in all the circumstances.
Truthfulness and
Yeah.
righteousness.
Yeah, Satyata. And so, but if we see, at least my conditioning, that the more dependence is on wealth, but not on developing the characters or righteousness. So how one can focus, or I can focus on from moving from money to Satya or the righteousness?
So I'm going to repeat something we talked yesterday. Hopefully, it will put some insight. I'll throw some insight here. Like in financial investing, we are told that every person has their very individual risk profile. Correct? Depending on how much risk you want to take, whether you're a risk averse person or a risk taking person, you have a risk profile. That is yours. Your wife's risk profile may be different. Your child's may be different. Someone else may be different, maybe similar but different. So in the same way, each one of us has a graph that follows how life will be. That there is a happiness curve and there is a curve for wealth. Okay. And there is a point where the happiness and wealth meet. At that point where wealth and happiness meet, for that person, that is the place where they are satisfied and happy. Below that, they don't have enough wealth to feel happy. But after that point, wealth and happiness move away. That means more wealth does not mean a person is happier.
Okay.
So something else need to be in place for a person to feel happy. Now for each person, that curve is their own individual. One has to find out what that curve is. So we need some wealth because you have to eat something. You need a place to stay. So some wealth is required, and without those, it's tough. It's not so easy. But there are some persons where that wealth and happiness curve meets very, very early on. So they can have very little and they can be very happy. For some, they need a little bit more to feel happy and protected and safe. For some, they need a lot more. But at some point, that curve moves where wealth is not sufficient. In fact, it has irrelevance to a person. Now, whole of Vedic teaching is the big picture. So it's beyond that wealth and happiness intersection. What is it that lies there? And that's one's character. Especially these items that Ramachandra is showing. So for that area of our curve or graph, we need character. Before that, we may need some money along with character. But the one later is only character that comes to one's. So how is it not there? It's there in very little pockets here and there. But because education isn't there to show us that, many people are operating on the lower side of this graph where wealth and happiness have yet to meet or just about meeting. I don't know if I answered your question. I thought I gave a context or a concept to it.
Yes, yes, Prabhu. In fact, that happiness and that wealth, that was a different understanding altogether.
Correct. It's not true that more wealth means more happiness.
Exactly.
It's not true in anyone's life, even in the richest people's lives. It's not true.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Some wealth is there, it's necessary, sure.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radha. Oh, this is Vishaka or Radha?
Radha.
Radha.
So, when Vasistha asked Ram, when Vasistha asked Ram to come back to Ayodhya, because when Bharata met Ram and Chitrakuta, Vasistha also asked Ram to come back to Ayodhya, and he gave an explanation saying that spiritual masters there's a word, I forgot it, like whatever instruction has to be obeyed too. So then the question is that which one is more important, your parents' instruction or your spiritual master's instruction? Not like the spiritual master in school or anything, but like the spiritual master, like Maharaj and all.
The spiritual teacher, the spiritual master.
Yeah.
In your case, your parents. I'm kidding. Of course, one should follow one's parents. And it's also important if the parents give the right instruction. In this case, Ramachandra is not defying Vasishta. Just the way Bhishma Dev, by not agreeing to Parashuram, was not defying him. He became famous as someone who sticks to his vow. So here the king has given a vow, and Ramachandra is telling Vasishta Muni that you, as well as anyone here, are advisors to the king, and the king makes the final decision. So we're all under the king's jurisdiction. I understand that you're telling me to come back more out of love and affection for you, but dharmically speaking, you also know that I cannot change that. And that is when Vasishta relents, because one cannot argue with Ramachandra. His argument is, his ability to offer an argument is very, very strong. It's impeccable. So this is where the Supreme Lord, his intelligence is so amazing that he finds the smallest little avenue to move on to the forest that seems to defy this side and that side, and any side that gives any offering of justification of why he should not do. He sticks on that little avenue and says, this is what I'm following. I hope that answers your question, Radha. Your question specifically was, is it more important to follow the spiritual master or the parent? So the answer, if you say, is hopefully the parent and spiritual master don't give opposite instructions. Now it depends. What is being spoken? There's always conversation. It doesn't mean very black or white that I have to defy one to follow the other. Arjuna, in the 7th chapter of the 1st canto, was given very conflicting instructions by his older brother, who was the king, and by Krishna, and by Bhima. Both are older. All three of them are older. Krishna was a very neutral, if you do, it's not wrong type of suggestion. But Arjuna figured out a way by which everyone was satisfied. So it's not just blind, oh, Maharaj told me, therefore I don't care what you say. Or you said something, Maharaj, I cannot follow because my parents told me something. One has to learn to reconcile opposing views. In Sanskrit or in the Vedanta Sutra language, it is called Samanvaya. Samanvaya means to reconcile conflicting ideas or instructions.
Well, Dasharatha also was following Vasistha's thing, since Vasistha is, the sage, or the main sage of the whole dynasty. So isn't Dasharatha also supposed to follow Vasistha's? And what if it's not the same? Because sometimes they aren't the same, like in Ramana's condition.
Brahmanas are advisors. They are not more powerful than the king per se. They don't administer. The king administers. They can advise the king, and the king can decide how to take their advice. So now take the picture of Ravana. All of his ministers, his Brahmanas, they all told him, don't do this, what you're doing. He didn't listen. Shukracharya also told Bali Maharaj, don't give. But he gave. The king who decides, not the Brahmana. The Brahmana advises. Therefore, the reaction belongs to the king, not to the Brahman who's advising.
Well, yeah, that's true. I was just thinking, since you mentioned Bali Maharaj, but Shukracharya's advice was bad. It wasn't that good, so wasn't it good for
It's not bad. It's not fully applicable in the context of when there is Vishnu standing in front. He took a rule. He took a rule that is very applicable, just cannot apply to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, anyone else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I ask another question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not from Ramayana, it's a general question. So what's the difference between spirit and ghost?
Spirit and ghost. Where did you get the word spirit from?
I heard somewhere.
Okay, so let me ask differently. In what context did you read the word spirit? Like Krishna or Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, the difference between spirit and matter, like that?
I guess in Bhagavatam.
Yeah, that's 18,000 verses. All right, so let's look at it quickly. There is the soul that is referred to as spirit. Then that soul is covered by the subtle body, and that subtle body is covered by a gross body, or the subtle body gives the form by a subtle body. Okay, so there are three. The spirit, in this context, we're calling spirit as the soul, the subtle body, and the gross body. And this gross body goes through 6 changes. If you read Bhagavad Gita Purports, chapter 2, verse 13 onwards, Prabhupada describes. It goes through 6 changes. The 6th change is that the body perishes, it dies. So when the body dies, still the subtle body is there. Mind, intelligence, and false ego. And the subtle body carries the soul into the next gross body. So sometimes when persons end their lives through, let's say, suicide or a very sudden way, we call it untimely, although there is debate of what is timely and untimely, but it is used as the word untimely, or they still have their life left, but their body is destroyed, then they have to continue somehow. So that time between 2 gross bodies, when the subtle body is living by itself, that is technically called ghost, or the one bereft of their body. Technically, the word is called preta. So that is ghost. It's a person or a subtle body that is waiting for a gross body to express itself fully. So that is a ghost. But inside that subtle body is the spirit, the actual soul living there. Of course, without a soul, there can't be a subtle body. It has no meaning. All right?
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is
Hare
Atulya.
Krishna. Yeah.
Prabhu, following up on the discussion you just had with Radha, one question that I have is, so what's the difference between us in the earlier times, difference between spiritual master and a Brahmana, a guiding Brahmana? So it seems like for Dashrath, Vishishta was a guiding Brahmana. But did Dashrath had a spiritual master, and how would it look like in that setting? So, and how would it look like in modern times?
So let's start with the modern time. Modern time, we have a very particular Diksha Guru and technically Siksha Gurus. Therefore, we say Vandeham Shri Guru Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun. Gurun is plural, many gurus. So we get one mantra from the spiritual master. In the previous ages, you could get different mantras and different instructions from different people. They would all be gurus. So Vasishta is also guru for the entire dynasty. But when they're playing the role of a king, they're administering. It's not that Vasishta and all that sat and said, okay, Dasharatha, today, this is what you're going to do. And he's just a puppet that says, oh, Vasishta said this, so this is what you're supposed to follow. That's not how it is. They guide in character and principles. And they make sure that the king is following proper character. So in Dasharath Maharaj promising his wife, there is no violation of character at all. And his asking Ramachandra because he made a promise, so therefore he's fulfilling the promise, is also not a violation of character at all. Therefore Ramachandra agreed, I'll go. Just the medium of it happened because the wife asked and all that, but it's a promise. A promise is a promise. So every time they would perform a yajna, that sitting as the yajman, you cannot perform the yajna without what is called taking diksha. So technically taking diksha means you take a kusha grass and wind it like a ring and you wear that. It's called pavitra. If you ever seen while doing yajnas, they wear the pavitras. So when you wear that pavitra, it means you are taking diksha for that yajna under the head priest.
Okay.
And the head priest will guide you how to perform and get the fruit of that yajna. So they are considered guru in that context for that situation. So Shukracharya was sitting, Bali Maharaj was sitting, and Vamana appeared. Ideally, you're not supposed to stand up while you're performing a yajna. But that rule does not apply to pure devotees and the Supreme Lord. As soon as Bali Maharaj saw and his heart inspired him that this is the Supreme Lord, he stood up. Same with Balaram. When Romaharsha is sitting on this Vyasasana and speaking, and Lord Balaram comes, everyone stands. So technically speaking, he doesn't need to stand because he's sitting on the Vyasas and he's sort of he's presiding over the assembly. He's their guru. But when the guru of all gurus comes, these rules don't apply. So in that context, how we understand guru, there is one person only, he's guru, everyone else is, that's not necessarily a complete picture. There is a Diksha Guru who has a very special place, who gives us admission into the Guru Parampara, the particular Sampradaya. He gives us admission into it. And along with him, there are many who teach us the courses, so we will actually graduate. So thinking that there's only one is a very flawed, I shouldn't say flawed, maybe that's too strong. It's not a complete picture. There is contribution by many. So I don't know if I addressed the previous and modern views.
No, Prabhu, got a clear idea here. Like
now plus parallelly, they have a different guru because through Gotra, through seminal line, the father gives the Gayatri mantra. It was always the father who gave the Gayatri mantra. And then different gurus give different mantras as part of the upasana. So different mantras are given. So they're called dvijas, right? Dvija means twice born. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas are called dvijas. All three of them get the Brahman thread. That means they all get their Brahmanical mantra from their fathers. Yet they meet Narada Muni and great sages, and they are given instruction on certain either mantra or teachings, and they're also guru. So there's not that only one guru has to be there. They're all gurus. And it doesn't mean that I violated this because I learned something there.
Thank you, Prabhu.
No, you're welcome. All right, 11:06. Any question? Someone else?
Do you have time for more, Prabhu?
Yeah, I have time. I don't know if others have.
So I commented the question. A comment was how, because this is on my mind, crisis counseling, and how Sumitra handled it with Kausalya is very exemplary. Of course, there's more examples in the Ramayana, but this was interesting way to look at it relative to what is taught in modern context.
And I'll tell you the relevance in modern context as soon as you finish your comment.
I finished my comment. I was going to ask the question, but go ahead.
If you take away the time, circumstance sort of paradigm, Sumitra gave hope to a hopeless person. So the whole crisis counseling is, you may use this word, you may use that word, phrase, whatever. It's that persons who are feeling hopeless need to hold on to hope. And how one does it depends on the context, but that is what Sumitra is teaching. She gave hope to Kausalya to manage her life for 14 years. So the hope is given, if you see the hope is given from the point of view of rationality. She tells, oh, he's so strong. There's rationality in it. There is love and affection in it. There is tenderness in it when she says he'll come back, massage your feet with his gentle hands, and you can bathe him with your tears. That is there too. There are so, I mean, we didn't go into every shloka because if you can unpack it, there's a lot more there. But she is using different ways in which Kausalya can hold on to hope. Part of her crisis counseling. Go ahead. You had a question?
The question is, I'm sort of forming it still around Sumitra, her nature, and how, first of all, how did she gain the strength she did to interact with Lakshman the way she did and encourage him, and interact with Kausalya the way she did? She seemed like perhaps the only one who had very strong emotional stability during that time.
Yeah.
Our understanding is the unstable emotions are driven by pure love, for sure.
Sure.
Yet her example stands out because she had emotional stability, although even that's driven by pure love. So I guess a couple of questions around that. One is, where did she get such strength? Have the acharyas commented something?
No, they just glorify her. That in fact, her greatness is that her ancestry is not even mentioned anywhere. Kausalya, we know, came from the Kosala kingdom. Kaikeyi came from the Kekiya kingdom, but there's no reference to where Sumitra came from.
Mystery, huh? Just like
very fascinating.
Just like the Avadutta Brahman, what is Avanti Brahman, and where did he get his realizations from?
It's not that she didn't cry when Lakshmana was going. She also cried. So she's definitely, there. in the situation. Her own son is leaving,
Hmm.
yet it's the service mindedness that she brings out for Lakshmana. For Lakshmana, what she gave him is to hold on to service and empowered him that yes, you are meant for service, so fulfill it. Great, see the opportunity there for you. For Kausalya, she gave her hope.
Very beautiful.
Yes, super.
Yeah. I thought another question around that, but it's gone away.
Okay. All right. If there's no other question, we'll pause. Is there anything? Let's.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
This is Sarvabhauma Das.
Sarvabhauma.
Please accept my humble Mr. Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Uh, Prabhu, just a comment. I was just trying to draw a parallel. In case of Dhruva Maharaj, his mother was also very shaken after hearing all the incidents, and still she maintained her stability and told Dhruva Maharaj to go in the forest. Actually, it's best to go where you find Vishnu or Krishna. And in this case also, as Sumitra was sending Lakshmana to the forest, to be with Lord Ramchandra. So in both the cases, they were kind of shaken up with grief, but they maintained their mental stability and gave the right instruction. So it's just appreciating that.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Very nice.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I was thinking of like Sumitra when she consoled Kausalya. She immediately, her lamentation has gone immediately. And I was thinking, what is that I can meditate on so I can also take the instruction from my superior and get the lamentation go away immediately.
It's not that Kausalya gave up her lamentation immediately. Her lamentation went away immediately because whoever was instructing her, like Sumitra, was fantastic. In your life, you need to find someone good.
No, maybe the instruction is always very good, but how I can
it's not working.
Learn to. No, I mean, from my side, I wanted
so she
to
says,
learn how to.
Nishamya Lakshmana Matra Vakyam. So it was from one mother to another mother. Ramasya Matur Naradeva Patnya. So one mother spoke to another mother because, from a general perspective, it takes one to know one. She's also lamenting the loss of her son to the forest. Kausalya is also lamenting. Yet she's showing, she says, Sadhya Sharire Vinanasha Shokaha Sharad Gato Megha Ivalpa Toyaha. Iva Alpa Toyaha, with what cloud that has very little water. So the grief can cloud a person, but her sense of empathy that, yeah, I'm also in the similar situation, yet, and I was telling, as we were discussing with Yamuna Jivana Prabhu, that Sumitra could give hope in a very wonderful way for Kausalya. So in our case, when someone is helping us, if we don't look forward towards hope, then that cloud remains, because in general, in counseling, one thing we are taught is that everybody loves their distress. They like to hold on to their distress because there is, in one's distress, there is comfort. I mean, as counterintuitive that it sounds, people like to be in their distress because it's comforting. To get out of it is difficult. So from Kausalya's side, she looked forward that, oh, there is hope, and held on to that hope. Many people hold on to their hopelessness because in that there is comforting. There is comfort.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I was
Because
also
holding on to hope means to change, to do something differently. And most people don't like to do something differently. Therefore, they find comfort in their own pain or distress. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead,
thank
Mata.
you, Prabhuji. Yeah. And I was thinking, like, one thought came into my mind, thinking that a situation may get better or may not get better, but still how I can take shelter of Krishna, like in any circumstance, whether it's good or bad, I still have to, because as long as Krishna's bless shelter is there for me, I can handle it. So that kind of thinking, should I be holding on to that, or should I be thinking that there is a hope that things may get better?
Yeah, the hope is that I have Krishna's lotus feet in my life. That is the hope you're holding on to, or the strength to see things. Things will get better doesn't mean always a rosy picture. Dukhalayam ashashvatam. Krishna did not say Sukhalayam ashashvatam. He said Dukhalayam ashashvatam. It's misery and everything is temporary, which means everything nice you get is also temporary. But the hope that you're holding on to is the glory of Ramachandra, Kausalya's meditation on Sri Ramachandra and his personality, his features, all of that. Now she's going to look towards that direction for 14 years, waiting for him to return. In Govardhan, there is a temple of Lota Baba. Whose Lota is that stick that cowherds have. There's a beautiful deity of him, big fat with super mustache like this. And Krishna had told him, I'm coming back. So ever since, he's waiting. He has not given up. He said, Krishna will come. He said he will come, he will come. Now when we enter Aranyakanda, one such person is Shabari. And previously it was Ahalya. They're all waiting. One day he'll come. So they all held on to this Nishchaya and Dhairya. And the way to hold on to that is through Utsaha.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. All right, 11:18. I think we need to pause here. If you have other questions, just hold on and we'll take them next time. Sorry, we went much longer than I thought. Okay, thank you very much. You have a wonderful weekend and see you again next Saturday. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.